Yo, what's good, guys? We are back at it again with another MLB The Show video for you guys, and today I'm going to be going over all of the All-Star content and kind of tier listing and ranking all of the players that we got over this All-Star weekend program, as well as like some of the Retro Derby guys. I put like the high round of that in the I do want to apologize about the infrequent uploads. It kind of worked out in this case because I was going to do Team Affinity, but then we got all of these cards, so it kind of worked out for the best. But I have just been really sick the last week and just couldn't really talk in long form. It's probably still pretty noticeable. My voice will probably get raspier as the video goes. There'll probably be a bunch of jump cuts. So I would ask you to bear with me, but we're getting back on the grind. Look for some streams coming soon. And yeah, let's real quick before we go over it, I'll just show you guys. If you go knock out the new All-Star program in game, you get one of these high rounds. So I will let you know who I think the best high round picks are. I think Jarren Duran is probably the best player in this pack, but I think that Juan Soto and Travi B right here are also really, really good options. You can see Travis Bazzana plays a ton of positions. I believe he is the first Australian first round draft pick ever, I think, is what his like record is. But you can see the stats are immaculate. He's a great card, plays a ton of good positions. Jarren Duran is just like the perfect center fielder. If you don't have Griffey yet, or if you want to have just an insane defensive outfield, definitely can run Duran and Griffey. And then Juan Soto, it's Juan Soto. He has one of the best swings in the game. Lefty isn't really an issue with him. He's an absolute stud, as well as him and Duran are two of the more expensive players. So if you are looking at completing the collection, they're good ways to go. But yeah, let's get started with the actual tier list content. I'm sure that's why a lot of you guys are here. And why not start with the collection reward? That's how Showzone ordered it, so that's how we'll go about it. Aaron Judge, easy S tier. One thing I will say after using this card a little bit, haven't used them online, but just using them offline, the swing feels a little different. The leg kick seems a little different. Maybe it's just placebo, but I'm not a huge fan of the leg kick. I still think it's a good swing. And if you still struggle with using 6'7" players, you're probably still going to struggle with this Judge. But it's a little bit different, I think. Don't quote me on that. But the hitting stats are great. Defensively, not the greatest. He's not a true center fielder, so you're going to have to move him to a corner spot where he's going to lose some fielding and reaction. But that being said, his bat is still way too good, and he's not necessarily the worst fielder in the world. He's an absolute stud and definitely worthy of doing the collection for. I don't even think it's that expensive to do the collection. Adolis, D tier seems harsh, but I think that's where I'm going to put him because his speed is absolutely terrible. I think he has like 43 speed. Plus, I just don't really typically like his swing, as well as he is a low round derby card, so they're always static, kind of worse. So not a huge fan of that Adolis card whatsoever. Alec Bohm, talk about swing that I despise. I can't deny that statistically he's a better card than Adolis, but oh, his swing is horrendous. I think he had like a Tops Now moment or something like a month or two ago that I had to sit there and grind for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. His swing is just putrid. Not a big fan of it. Unless you're a Phillies fan, I'd probably steer clear. Santander, easy S tier. If you were somebody that was still running the Team Affinity one, this is a direct upgrade for 30K. Maybe you'll get lucky and get him out of the collection because the collection gives like an All-Star game, a Derby pack, and a prospect pack. So maybe you'll get lucky and hit that mid round, and you can get him that way. But absolute stud, just a direct upgrade from the Team Affinity one. You know, it's hard to find switch hitting outfielders. It's even harder to find switch hitting first baseman. So he has elite value there. This Bobby Witt card looks pretty good, and I will admit that his swing has grown on me a little bit, but defensively he's terrible. As a shortstop, defensively he's terrible. The speed definitely helps to make up for it. But look at these stats. This is a high round derby card, and the hitting stats are fairly good. The contact's probably a little lower than what you'd want, but the clutch and power is great. And he has a really good swing, I think. But just defensively, not really that guy. Not somebody I can rely on at shortstop necessarily. This 95, I'm gonna have to look at the pitcher's pitches. I can't really know all their windups. I haven't used all of these cards. So we have a slider, four seam, splitter, and a sinker on Brody. He looks fine. You know, most of these 95s are probably just gonna find their way into C tier unless they have something that sets themselves apart. I think that's a fine pitch mix. He can, you know, hold it down for you, especially if you don't have a super strong rotation at this point. Brian Reynolds, I think he's A tier. The problem with him is the power is not great and the defense is very, very poor. The plus is he's already a primary left fielder. So as long as you keep him in left field, which is probably where you'd want him, is in a corner spot. He's not going to lose any defense, but the contacts aren't great. The powers aren't great. The clutch is all right. And then the fielding is pretty bad. 66 speed, 60 reaction, bronze fielding. So nothing to write home about. He's a fine card. If you want to use him, you can definitely use him. I think I might drop him, but just him being a switch hitter, right? He's probably a B tier card, but him having a really good swing, right? I always say it a lot in these videos where I'm like, he's a switch hitter, but he doesn't have a great swing. It's just that he is a switch hitter. Brian Reynolds has a great swing, and he's a switch hitter. So I think that just takes him from being like a B tier card easily to like an A tier card. Harper, very similar, like when you adjust for the power curve of where we're at right now, very similar to like the live series and that other card that he had earlier in the season. 100, 104, 86 power left is a little low, but is what is. 106 power right, and still has the max out clutch. So, like I said, very similar when you adjust the power scaling of where we're at in the game right now to the cards he had earlier in the season. So if you like those cards, you're gonna like this card. Fairly similar to like Santander in that regard, where he's just kind of a direct upgrade. Bryce is one of the cards I've had the pleasure of using. He's a Tigers player, so that's a plus. Getting comps to Corey Seager, and I can say that his swing is very good. The stats, very mediocre, but the swing is very good. I think he's a fine option. I don't know if him just having a good swing is necessarily worthy of kind of separating him from where a bunch of these other 95s are going to end up. So for that reason, I'll probably leave him in C. This guy absolutely hated his swing. I used him because he's like the only catcher that is in this like draft program. And you kind of have to knock out that program. But stats wise, just really mid. 101, 85, 97, 88, 97 clutch. Not a great defensive catcher. Not super fast. He's probably faster than your average catcher. But not a great card. Not a huge fan of him. Moving on, we have Cam Caminiti, nephew of, I believe his name's Ken Caminiti, used to play a while ago and got in trouble for some certain things. Four seam, slider, curveball, circle change, sinker. So having a 5-pitch mix is a dub. 102 hits, 103 clutch. The control's a little bit questionable, especially at this part of the season, but if you are looking for one of these 95s to actually use, one of these draft cards to actually use, he looks like a stud. He looks like he can definitely be of service. Cam Smith, Cubs pick. I don't think I've used him. I believe he's one of the cards that you only can get by doing like the draft map or earning that pack. It's in the program also. 103 left, 99 right, 85, 83, 100 clutch. Decent fielder, not super fast. Plays all around the infield and most outfield positions. I think he's fine. I think he just kind of blends in with a lot of those other 95s. It's going to be hard to like separate a lot of those 95 draft cards from one another. Carlos Correa, I would love to put this card in S tier. This is a card where if I did the Team Affinity tier list, easy S tier card. But now I think he's honestly outclassed by a couple of his peers. But 111, 110, 117 power left, 82 power right. Biggest flaw on this card. Very similar to the like Tops Now monthly awards, whatever you want to call it. One that we had earlier where he was great at everything except power right. This is a very similar story to that card. 107 clutch, 80 fielding, fairly slow. So again, still in that kind of Ripken archetype, but if you enjoyed the other one, this is a direct upgrade. You're gonna also probably enjoy this card. Carson Bench. I hear he has a really fast bat, is what I've heard in the pre-draft, you know, hyping up of prospects, but the stats on paper are just bleh. 92, 103 is very nice, 83 power left, not something you want to see, 97 power right, 99 clutch, decent fielder, not super fast. So not really, enough to separate him from some of these other guys. He might have a really good swing. I wouldn't know, but I don't think it's worthy of bumping him a tier. My guy Charlie here could have been the #1 pick in the draft, probably the highest guy, the guy I'm the highest on of anybody in the draft. He's an absolute stud. He had a 1600 OPS in college, which is just crazy. As a Tigers fan, he's kind of what Torkelson was supposed to be. So we'll see how he develops in Colorado. Super great stadium for him to play at. 101, 100, 115 power left, 111 right, 104 clutch. Looks decent defensively. He's also very tall. So he's going to be able to come down with a lot of balls at third or first if you want to play him there. And I think his swing's really good. I've only used him in the showdown. I don't know if he's one of the cards I bought for the collection or not. But he's a stud. I think he has a really good swing. And if he's one of the top end guys you want to buy, because I believe you have to buy at least 1 or 2 of the high round guys in order to lock in for that judge, then I think he's a good option. I think he's a very solid card. Chase Burns, not so much. He kind of has that Skeens outlier where it's not like a true outlier. This is a card that kind of struggles to hit over 101. If he throws 102, 103, your socks are blown off. 104 hits through 9. 76 walks, not awesome. 104 clutch. Decent velo difference, but really just a subpar pitch mix. You're throwing a 4-seam, a slider, and a circle change. He's almost a 3-pitch pitcher as a starting pitcher. And I don't think he has that like true outlier. He doesn't have that like Randy Johnson, John Donaldson, Pedro Martinez type of outlier where they're throwing 102 every single pitch. He's not that guy. Not a huge fan of that card. 99 Chris Sale. I think he's probably A tier just because statistically he's very good as a pitcher. And depending on who you're going up against, he could very well be a dominant pitcher. He's very similar to like Nolan Ryan in that regard, where depending on who your opponent is, he's either going to throw a no-hitter or he's going to get shelled. And that's kind of how Sale's always been. His gimmick is that he can throw kind of hard, and he just pitches from that really funky delivery. So 102 hits, 101 walks, very nice, 104 clutch, decent. So always has that super slow slider, super loopy slider, not really what you want in the show. 4-seam fastball, circle change, sinker. So not the greatest pitch mix to work with, but when you mix in kind of the gimmick of the arm slot and whatnot, definitely a usable pitcher, especially for where pitching's at in the game right now. It's not in a very strong spot, so I don't think he's a terrible option. Christian Moore, Angels draft pick. I think he's probably B tier. Nothing super crazy. Second base, shortstop. 101, 96, 103, 100 with 99 clutch. And he's not really a great fielder. He's a fine fielder, not super fast either. He's just kind of bleh. He's whatever. There's other second basemen I would definitely prefer. Other guys you could play at second base I would prefer. So not really a card that's on my radar. This Yelich, I think maybe B tier. That'll probably be unpopular for most people because he always has a swing that a lot of people really enjoy. 110 left, 120 right, 86 left, 80 right. So I think that's just kind of his issue is the power. Everything else is fairly good. He's still kind of a subpar defensive outfielder. He's not super fast. Just for the mob mentality, I'll probably drop him up to an A or push him up to A. But not a card that I would be obsessed with running. But historically, if you get along well with Yelich cards, you can see the brain's kind of lagging a little bit here. CJ Abrams, I think he's fine. He has a nice swing, but just really lacks power, and he's not the best defensive shortstop. I think these numbers here are actually doing him service. I believe war-wise, IRL, he's not the greatest defensive shortstop. I think he's a fine card, but there's definitely guys you could find that I would prefer over him. Cole Reagans, I haven't really looked at this card. I believe he's a 5-pitch pitcher. He is one of the event rewards. So you can see 96 hits, a little lower than you'd probably want, 87 walks, 4-seam, circle change, cutter. slider, and a knuckle curve. So the curveball, you know, he's whatever. I think he's similar to like Kim Caminiti. I'd probably prefer or Cam Caminiti. I think I'd probably prefer Caminiti over him. But he's there. He's an option. Corbin Burns, All-Star card. I think he just kind of gets lumped in with them where he's usable. He's decent. The problem with Corbin, like I always say, everybody's seen him. They know what you want to throw. He still can be very good, especially if you're playing newer players with him. But more experienced players typically kind of know how you want to pitch with Corbin Burns. Go to Johnson. I believe this card's stats aren't too crazy. I'm going to have to go over them real quick. Make sure. Yeah, so 86 left, 84 right. That's kind of what I remembered. 106 power left, 104 power right with bad clutch, and he's not a great defensive outfielder, but the speed definitely helps to make up for it. I think it drops him a little bit. More of like an all-star card. If you're on all-star, this card can give you some good run. If you're on higher difficulties, probably a card I would stay away from. David Fry, huge fan of this card. I think his swing is unreal. Definitely an A-tier card for me. I did kind of get to use his tops now a little bit last season, but I used this card a ton when I was grinding this program. Definitely the first guy I would take out of the AL Central if you haven't already taken somebody. 106 left, 104 right, 103 power left, 88 power right is kind of the only smudge on this card, I think. 107 clutch, not a great defensive catcher. But his swing is butter, honestly. He can play a ton of positions, and his swing is butter. It's very reminiscent of like last year's JT Realmuto, last year's Will Smith. Very high early leg kick that isn't disjointed from the swing at all. Huge fan of that card. Think he's an absolute stud. Super slept on card. Here is a not super slept on card. Elly De La Cruz, top of A tier. You know, a lot of people ran that Tops Now one at the start of the year. He played way over his stats, so I'm sure this one will do a similar thing. 91 left, 95 right, 90 left, 104 right with 87 clutch. So the clutch is kind of low. The reaction's kind of low. But at the end of the day, it's Elly, especially if you play this card at like second base or something. He will just never give up a ball through the infield at second base. He probably won't give up many at shortstop, and when he does, it'll be more so because his reaction's so bad. But defensively, one of the better shortstops in the game, even though he has 70 reaction. And then you're also getting a switch hitter with a great swing on top of that. So Elly, big fan of that card. I don't think he's top tier at shortstop, but I think he is very good. Class A, C tier. Like I always say, if you want to have one guy like this in your bullpen, full beans. If you want to have a full bullpen of guys that just have outlier 2 pitches, you're not going to have a lot of fun. So I would try to kind of pick your battles here. I would not have Class A, Doval, Rob Dibble, Mason Miller. I would not have a bullpen full of those guys. So I would pick one. If you want an outlier cutter, he's one of your best options. Tatis, easily, I think S tier. I'm not sure. Kind of a hard card to rank because if he was a primary shortstop and wasn't losing a bunch of defense when you move him to a secondary, I think he'd easily be S tier. That being said, he's still not bad, right? Still a gold fielder with 85 reaction and 92 speed. I think shortstop's where he has the most value. 103 left, 115 right, 83 left, 109 right. So basically an opposite Carlos Correa, slightly worse contact numbers. I think slightly better power numbers overall, but also kind of lacks against one side. I think his swing is much improved from last year. If you enjoyed the rookie one, I believe it's the same exact swing. Very early leg kick, still kind of a slow swing through the zone, but as long as you're using the leg kick, you should be good to go. I think he's an absolute stud. Next up, we have Garrett Crochet without outlier. So this card's brutal. This is a trash card. You know, the only thing that ever made that Future Stars Crochet good when he came out in Team Affinity with Edward Cabrera was the fact he had outlier. Take that away from him. Just kind of a Chris Sale knockoff. You know, 4-seam, cutter, slider, circle change. He's definitely like better than Mason Miller. I think if they gave him an outlier 4-seam, I would prefer this card over a guy like Mason Miller. But he doesn't. So he doesn't, not even really a comparable card to compare him to. Gunner, super nice swing. I think he gets over a guy like Adolis because he has a nice swing. You can see 85 contact left, 104 contact right, 115 against both sides, 98 clutch, poor fielder, more of like a third base or a first baseman than a shortstop. But he has a really good swing. So if you want to use him, if you're a big Gunner fan, he's definitely a usable card, but not somebody I would prioritize using. Hagen Smith, super solid pitcher. I think he's probably bottom of A tier. I think he's definitely better than like Burns and Caminiti. Um, when you go look at him, 109 hits, very high hits. The walks isn't great, doesn't have outlier, but he does throw hard. Four seam slider, splitter, sinker, and a curveball. So a solid pitch mix, nothing to write home about. For me, I'm also going to have to use this card a little bit and kind of see what the arm slot looks like. But on paper, looks like a decent enough pitcher. Nothing to write home about, but decent. Isaac Paredes, fine, I guess. I've never been a huge fan of his swing. It just feels kind of slow and disjointed to me. But 113 left, 93 right, little lackluster. 85 right, 10 or 85 left, 102 right, with 109 clutch. Poor fielder, not super fast. Does have an insane amount of quirks, so he'll definitely play a little better than his overall, but not a card I would prioritize running, especially at third base. Third base is so loaded this season. There's so many good options there. Not a card I would go out of my way to get. Caglione, who you get out of the collection, I believe, relatively early on. As a pitcher, you can see 95 hits, 74 walks, 102 clutch, four seam slider, cutter, circle change. Not great as a pitcher, but as a hitter, 90, 102, 104, 125, 104 clutch, and not a bad fielder. You know, you do have to take into account the secondary penalty, but this is a card where I would actually consider just playing him in the field or DHing him. Kind of different from like a Shohei Ohtani, where a lot of people always want to DH him or they want to stick him in the outfield. I think you can do that with Caglione. You can definitely just play him at first base. He'll be solid enough. Jackson Holiday, probably S tier. Very competitive with like Tatis. It's just kind of a question of how many lefties do you have in your lineup for me at that point, because I tried making a lineup with him earlier, and there was just like 4, 5, 6 lefties, depending on what starter you end up going against. That might not be a fun day at the office. 107 left, 125 right, absolutely insane. 90 left, 100 right, 125 clutch. Very good defensively. You put some parallels on him, he's going to be one of the better defensive shortstops in the game. Definitely flashbacks to like the Jackson Holiday we got on day one with that captain boost that you could run with him, made him an absolute stud. This is a very similar card in that regard. Also, profiles well as like a second baseman. He gives you a lot of stuff that typical second baseman won't give you. So he's definitely S tier at that position as well. James Tibbs, probably just another one of these 95 guys that just kind of make it into C tier. I should almost rename the tier. So outfielder, 101, 105, 86, 88. Looks better than a lot of the other cards. 104 clutch. They bumped his discipline to inflate his overall, so you kind of hate to see that. Decent defensively, but kind of slow. So that's actually going to hurt him. Not my favorite card in the world, but also not really distinct enough from these other 95s to make a big deal about it. Jarren Duran might be the best card we got all weekend. I said it when I was kind of telling you guys who to pick. Profile's awesome as a center fielder. Thank the Lord they made him my primary center fielder. You don't have to play him in left field, aka like a Ricky Henderson type. Looks like an absolute stud. 106 left. Most people are probably going to use this card a ton, so why not look at it like P4? 110 left, 119 right, 94 left, 125 right. So against righties, you just don't even pitch to him. Has an awesome swing, 125 clutch, absolute stud defensively, 98 reaction. You get him super fractured. He has 99 reaction in center field with 99 speed. This card's an absolute joke. He's worth every penny. I think he's an absolute stud. Barring us getting like a late season Randy Johnson or John Donaldson type meta, he's an absolute stud. He's him, for lack of a better term. JJ Weatherholt, pretty hype prospect in real life. We'll see kind of how his card looks. 105, 109, 81, 86. So the powers are a little bit on the lower side. I assume he'll be good defensively and make up for that. 100 clutch, 82 fielding, 80 reaction, 89 speed. He's fine. A card that, you know, probably does profile better as a second baseman. He's a 97. So he's not going to be cheap. I believe these 97s are like 35, 40K on the market. So probably not worth his price point, but a solid option, especially if you're like a Cardinals fan. Altuve, B tier. As a hitter, as I was saying, as a hitter, always enjoy Altuve. Always think he has a very solid swing. You can see the contacts are in a good spot. The problem is the power. He doesn't have great power against righties with 93. He has abysmal power against lefties with 76, 115 clutch, and then he can't field to save his life. He's going to make a ton of errors. You'd be a madman to play this guy at shortstop, and you'd probably be a crazy person, honestly, to play him at second. He's basically a DH that doesn't really hit in a manner befitting a DH. Like, you can definitely use that spot on better players like this guy. If you can't work him in your lineup, he's probably a great DH to have. Jose Ramirez, easy S tier card. The contact numbers aren't awesome, but they're better than what I thought we would get. 103, 98, 120 power against both sides, 105 clutch. Poor defensively, but, you know, it's a derby card. Honestly, not that bad for Jose Ramirez. 52 speed. Really, with him, it's the swing and the switch hitting ability and the positional versatility. You can play this card at third, you can play him at second, or you can probably DH him, which is probably the best spot for him. His swing's unreal, honestly. I think if we can get a card that is statistically similar to the one last year that we got, this one might be better. His swing is unreal this year. Absolutely, you know, one of my top tier swings in the game. He's a stud. And that card is basically perfect. Like, he could definitely get better, but in my eyes, he's an absolute stud. Josh Naylor, I feel like this is probably a C tier card. Not really a swing I particularly love. Oh my, 70 contact left, 81 contact right, 92 power left, 115 power right, 87. Where are the attributes on this card? This is crazy. This is a crazy bad card. I cannot believe this is a 95 overall first baseman I'm looking at. This card, honestly, this is F tier, bro. There's no reason to use him ever. Like, that is crazy. Yeah, on a Guardians theme team, he probably still wouldn't look great. Wow, it's a rough year to be a Guardians fan. Like here you go. You can have a 89 overall Josh Naylor and Tristan McKenzie with 2 pitches. That's brutal. It's a brutal year to be a Guardians fan. Juan Soto, S tier by far. He's up there with Duran. The fact that he even makes it a conversation as to who to pick in that pack between him and Duran says enough. Says all you need to know. 110, 116, 95, 120, 125 clutch, and honestly really good in the field. The problem is the speed. He's never going to be the fastest player, but the fact that he's going to get really good jumps on the ball most of the time should hopefully kind of not outweigh that, but offset that. And then the swing, right? One of the only swings in the game. I will sit here and legitimately tell you it does not matter if I'm batting lefty-lefty against Randy Johnson. It's the same as seeing a righty. So he has an absolutely phenomenal swing. Him and Griffey have like 2 of my favorite lefty swings every year. He's an absolute stud. Enough said. Next up, 95 Juan Soto. So this is just kind of the poor man Soto. Obviously still has that great swing. But I believe the hitting stats are worse, and then the fielding is where he takes a huge drop off. 101, 97, so like 10 less contact against both sides. 86 power left, 100 power right, 125 clutch. It's nice to see he still keeps the clutch. And then fielding wise, not the worst. Silver fielder with 83 reaction, 53 speed. I think with the way I just gassed the other one, I think he makes it the bottom of A tier. But really, the gap between this Juan Soto and this Juan Soto is massive. J-Rod, a lot of people are going to have fond memories of this card from last year. He's fine. When this card came out, we thought we were looking at one of the best center fielders in the game. Now, kind of the meta has shifted. The power curve has adjusted. He's fine. He's decent. Like 104 left, 97 right, 120 against both sides, 101 clutch. The fielding's very poor, but the speed kind of helps to offset it a little bit. Has really good quirks, has a good swing every year. but just not really coming anywhere close to like touching like Jarren Duran or even like a Mike Trout. Just not that great of a card. This card, talk about a gimmick. He beats Chris Sale to a pulp. When you talk about gimmicks, he's a switch pitcher. The problem is his pitch mix sucks. If he had a better pitch mix, he would be an absolute demon. So he switched, so he'll always pitch, not necessarily against the handedness side, I believe, but I think it has to do with stats. So if somebody's worse against righties, he pitches as a righty. If they're worse against lefties, he pitches as a lefty, I believe is how it works. 98 hits, 90 control, 102 clutch. So all the stats are good, but the pitch mix just isn't really there. 4-seam, slider, circle change, sinker. Basically, if you want to look at this guy, he is a switch pitching Luis Castillo, basically. So he's fine. He's decent. The gimmick's cool. But I'd probably rather use Cole Reagans or King. I keep saying that. Cam Nitty. That's a tongue twister. Over him. Just, I don't think the gimmick's that valuable. Kalen Culpepper. This card's whatever, I think. I don't think he's statted too insane. Twins pick. Shortstop, second base, third base. 103, 101, some of the worst power we've seen all day. 78, 76, 102 clutch, and decently defensively. I don't know what you figure when a card has no power. I think he's fine. If you can get away with that low power, if you play at a high elevation field and you really turn out to enjoy his swing, then I think he's definitely usable, but would not be one of my first guys. Cash Mayfield, baller name. We'll see about the stats. Let's see. So he is a starting pitcher that they gave a bat to in the icon. I did not even know that. So 95 hits, 91 walks, 98 clutch, decent differential, 4-seam, slurve, circle change, sinker. A decent 4-pitch mix. It's definitely not bad. I think it definitely bumps him over a lot of these other 95s. He definitely, separates himself from the pack. I think he's fine. He's usable. Again, not really a card I would be dying to use though. Kellen Lindsey. See what he's looking like. Shortstop, second base. Wow. Oof. It's like the Twins guy, except worse with more speed. So I think if you want that speed demon, he's there. But not really somebody I'd be looking for. Ketel Marte. I believe this card's pretty bad against one side of the plate, but it's still Ketel Marte. If you don't want to use your wild card spot on the season awards one from last season, this card's here. He's not terrible. 125 left, 90 right, 125 left. Power wise, 75 power right. So he's just really bad against righties, but the clutch is there. The fielding's honestly fairly decent. 80 reaction, 95 fielding, 64 speed. He's decently tall for a second baseman also, so he should get some good dive animations. He's solid. He's a decent option. Maybe if you platoon him, it feels kind of weird to platoon a switch hitter. Maybe you start somebody that's better against righties, and if your opponent's pitching a lefty, you just bring in Ketel for the rest of the game. Definitely kind of a niche I could see him filling for a decent amount of people. Kirby Yates, his card's putrid. Don't even get me started. 3-pitch pitcher with 3 not great pitches. Doesn't really throw hard. 125 hits, so that's nice. Really bad control. Really good clutch. 4-seam splitter slider. So he has basically the Felix Bautista repertoire without having outlier, without having that janky release. There's just really not a lot to like about this card. Maybe on Legend, he would be kind of a weird pick to throw out there, but on lower difficulties, he's going to get absolutely shelled. Connor Griffin, another one of these like higher overalls from that draft class. You can see shortstop and outfield. Not really something you see too often, like a Tatis type player. 99 left, 90 right, 102 left, 90 right. 91 clutch, very good defensively, absolutely phenomenal defensive shortstop. That being said, I don't know how much value I can put on that when he's not very good with the bat and not a switch hitter. I would much rather use Ellie De La Cruz in this card, but he's there. This Liam Hendricks, he is going exactly with his boy Kirby Yates. Not a good card. Everybody's going to get him. He's fairly early in that program. Does not have outlier. 4-seam slider, curveball, 2-seam. This guy basically throws 2 pitches. He throws either a fastball or a slider, and then every once in a while he'll throw a BP curveball. So a 2-pitch pitcher with not the best stats on paper. I'm good on that. Not really a card I'm looking to use. Logan Gilbert, traditionally kind of a BP guy, but I believe they gave this card 5 pitches, if I remember right. So I think he's halfway decent. You can see 103 hits, 94 control, which should be the case with the Logan Gilbert card. Bad clutch, a really bad clutch, 4-seam slider, cutter, splitter, curveball. Not the best pitch repertoire, not a super very, outstanding speed differential either. I think it just drops in B tier. Yeah, he has 5 pitches, but they're not really the best 5 pitches. And that clutch being that low is really gonna suck at this point. Logan Webb, probably B tier. He serves a purpose. He's an absolute control freak. If you're on All-Star or if you're on Legend, where kind of it's opposites, right? On All-Star, everybody has a huge PCI, so you don't put that much value on hits through 9. And then on Legend, everybody usually has a small PCI, so you also don't have to put a ton of weight on hits through 9. Maybe Logan Webb could be a demon for you. That being said, I won't be using him, but this number right here is very high. 109 walks through 9. I used this card in Conquest. He had very small pars. He's a control freak. He's a control freak with a relatively good pitch mix. He will definitely have a niche. There will be people that get along very well with this card, but for me, not really somebody I'm looking for. Luis Arias, this will not be a popular one. C tier, this card's whatever. The power is just absolutely terrible. 59-67. But if you are somebody, I feel like I say this basically every video now, where you get to Hall of Fame and you struggle with the PCI size, or if you're like kind of a seasoned Hall of Fame player and you end up on Legend and you struggle with those PCI sizes, this guy's like good training wheels. He can kind of help you there. He's going to give you a bigger PCI, also has max out clutch, but he's a poor fielder and he's not going to hit a lot of home runs, even with these quirks. So a card I never really see the hype with year to year. Ozuna, I don't really like his swing at all. This card's a straight up DH. I think he's maybe D tier, maybe C tier. D tier might be a little harsh, but I'm not a huge fan of his swing. It's just kind of weird and disjointed to me. 99, 80, 115 against both sides. Power wise, 93 clutch. Yeah, I'm good. If you want to use Ozuna, wild card the 99 that we got at the end of last season, this is not the card. Marcus Semien, I don't really like his swing. I'll be honest. I don't like his swing, and the stats just aren't that good. Absolutely rakes against lefties. 125-90. If he came out last season, we'd be balling. But this season, not really a card I'm looking at. 79 contact right, 84 power right, decent clutch, nothing right home about. Not really that crazy of a fielder. We've seen better defensive Semien cards. We've seen faster Semien cards. This ain't it. Not really a card I'd be too concerned about getting. Mason Miller honestly goes in that like class A tier. Pick one of them. If you like Mason Miller more, if you like having an outlier on that 4-seam more than like a cutter or something, he's your guy. Decent pitch mix now. Doesn't have the live series pitch mix, so it could be better. But he's fine. Nick Kurtz. Probably should have slowed that down. I don't know how YouTube's going to take that, on the subtitles, but we'll see. 98 contact left, 100 right, 100 power left, 104 power right, 99 clutch, 87 fielding, and not very fast. So this is a pure first baseman, very similar to like Matt Olson, right? Who used to be an A's, plays first and right field. Not really my favorite card in the world. I think there's better first base options than my guy Nick, as we will refer to him for the rest of the video. Paul Skeens, he's fine, I guess. I struggle with S tier with this card. This is a card where I'm just gonna have to use him. I'm gonna have to get my reps in with him. He kind of still has like a weird outlier in a way where it feels like it doesn't proc 100% of the times. He struggles to hit like 102, 103. He can hit 101 relatively decently. I don't know if his like velo's his velo's max, so I don't know what it is. 102 hits, 105 walks, so that's very good. Great clutch. But four seam, a insanely fast splitter, which says #1 ranked. Showzone doesn't really know what they're talking. There's a good example of don't trust everything you see. Because he has like that Yohan Duran splitter where they gave it outlier. It's too fast, too close to the four seam. Other than like on Legend, it's not gonna get you swings and misses. A lot of times people are gonna be late on the four seam and miss swing and be early on the splitter and hit it out for a home run. So just not a great pitch in that regard. Slider and Slayer, not my favorite combo in the world. They're two very similar pitches, and then Vulcan change. That isn't insanely slow. He's fine. I think maybe your best bet is going to be working that Vulcan change with the Splinker. Maybe I would prefer them give him an outlier sinker over just giving him that splitter. Pete Alonso, not my favorite swing in the world. Stats wise, he's whatever. It's a first baseman. 194, 115 against both sides, 98 clutch. That's all you need to see. He's a first baseman that can hit relatively well. There's a lot of options, but if you want to use Pete, he's there. He's a decent option. Reynaldo Lopez, they did not give him outlier. He throws relatively hard in real life. Maybe not outlier worthy, but fairly hard. You can see 101 hits, 125 clutch, four seam, slider, circle change, 12-6. So that pitch mix is putrid. He kind of needs like outlier really to ever be meta. So I think he's C tier. He's just kind of bleh, middle of the pack. Riley Green, my boy right here. This is my boy. That being said, I think I need to be objective as much as I can anyway. So left field, so that's a huge dub, right? Because Riley historically has been a center fielder. He's a slow Aaron Judge type of center fielder. So it's nice that they put him in left field to start with. That's going to help his defense. But what is this number right here? How is this a number on a 96 overall card? That is absolutely brutal. So 78 contact left, 113 right, 102 left, 106 right. Very good clutch, very good fielding. He's not really slow to be a corner guy. Usually has a very good swinging game, but wow, that contact makes him borderline unusable, to be honest. He's just C tier. He kind of blends in with a lot of the other cards that aren't really the best. Bobby Suarez, I'm not sure. I think top of A tier, if you really like that 99 at the end of last season, you'll probably love this card. They should probably touch his pitch mix because in real life, he just throws straight gas every single pitch. But he is what he is. Four seam, sinker, circle, slider, cutter. They did give him double outlier, which is very nice. I think the outlier on the sinker probably pushes him to S tier, honestly. I hate when cards have like an outlier sinker and then just a normal max velo four seam. The fact that he has both, or the fact that they gave it to the four seam, absolute dub. I think I really enjoy this card now, knowing that. Roman Anthony, you get him relatively early in the collection. I think he's a fine card. Nothing too crazy. Very similar to the one we got earlier in, I think, last season. I think he was like a headliner or something. Not a true center fielder. He's too small, or not too small, too slow to be a true center fielder. 79 speed, 82 reaction. So he will lose a little bit of reaction. But 108 left, 101 right, 113 left, 110 right, 107 clutch. Very good hitting stats, and honestly, his swing's very good. I used him at BR run last season, so he's absolute stud. He has a good swing. This is a great free card. If you're on a budget, just knock out the bottom of that kind of all-star collection, get your free Roman Anthony, and laugh to the bank, because I think he's a very good card. Ryan Helsley. I never know if it's Helsley or Helsley. So, for you guys that like pointing out pronunciation, maybe you can help me with that one. But always just kind of a mid card. 114. He's going to have the outlier four seam, slider 12-6. So absolutely brutal card. Honestly, I think he's worse than like Mason Miller in Class A, just because one of his pitches is a curveball. Sure, it might throw your opponent for a loop the first time you throw it. The second time you throw it, it's going to be on the moon. Just always a bad pitcher in game. At least in recent years, since they've kind of dumbed this pitch mix down. Ryan McMahon always has a really, really, really good swing. Stats wise, 118, 102, 104, 94, 93 clutch, 92 fielding. I mean, this card's a stud, honestly. You put this card at second base, this is Brandon Lau on steroids. I think he easily makes S tier. Maybe not as a third baseman, especially when you're like directly comparing him to some of these other cards we got, like Jose Ramirez or like Chipper Jones or somebody like that. But at second base, there's not a lot of competition for a second baseman that hits the ball the way this card does. So know that he'll probably be kind of bad on defense, but should be, an absolute stud on offense. Should be a catalyst on offense. Ryan Sloan, bad hits, decent control, four seam, sinker, circle, slider. Not the best pitch mix in the world. He just kind of fits in with a lot of these other 95s where if you really want to use them, they're usable, but not a card I'd necessarily be looking at. Salvi, I did not get along well with this card for some reason. Maybe I was just halfway asleep when I was grinding with him, but 114 left, 105 right, 90 left, 101 right, max out clutch. So on paper, absolutely insane catcher. I think he just kind of makes A tier. I don't love his swing. If historically you get along well with Salvi cards, this card's going to be a stud for you. But for me, it just didn't really click for whatever reason. Slam and Sammy Sosa. I think he's A tier. I think he's fine. He's going to be in a corner spot, probably in right field for most people. 111 left, very good. 95 right, probably a little lower than what you want at this point. 120 against both sides. 92 clutch, definitely lower than what you want. And then kind of the hallmark, trademark, whatever you want to say about Sammy Sosa cards in the past. He's been a very, very good defensive outfielder. This card's not that. But with the swing, with the quirks, with that power, I wouldn't be shocked if every time this guy touches the ball, it's either a pop-up or a home run, and there's no in between. So I think he can be very solid. Seaver King probably just fits in with these other 95s. I'll go more in depth on the stats. So 197, 70, no. Yeah, I'm thinking D tier for him. Just not really a power guy. Power is the most important stat in this game. Not really that guy. Ohtani, I'd be remiss not to put him at S tier. The stats on paper are absolutely insane. The quirks are crazy. He has some of the best hitting quirks in the game. Really, the issue, I think, them giving him breakout liar when this card can't pitch is hilarious. Maybe there's some shenanigans. Maybe people know more than I do. Maybe there's some way to get this card to pitch. But 101 left, 113 right, 94 left, 125 right, 100 clutch. I think he's always like the most overrated player ever. In game, in real life, he's an absolute monster. But in game, I think he's so overrated. I think his swing is worse this year than it has been in previous years. I'm not a fan of this card. But that being said, statistically, he's that guy. If you can use Ohtani cards very well, he's easily S tier. But for me personally, I'd probably have him in like A tier. Imanaga, absolute dog. I'm assuming his pitch mix will not be very good. Four seam, splitter, slurve, 12-6 cutter. So him having a slurve and a 12-6 is kind of a L. The cutter kind of redeems him a little bit. 97 hits, 105 control. So kind of similar to like Logan Webb, but probably with a worse pitch mix. So I think that kind of reflects. He's probably B tier. He's just kind of whatever. Slade Caldwell. Not sure. Probably C tier. Again, a lot of these 95s just kind of blend together. So primary center fielder. Just really, really bad stats. But he is very good defensively. So if you want a defensive center fielder, he can be one of your guys. Very similar to like another Diamondbacks pick in Drew Jones. Straight defense. And the bat kind of comes secondary. Tanner. That is the wrong Tanner. So we'll do the All-Star. I assume he's very similar statistically to that season awards one we got. 96 hits, a little bit low. But again, the beautiful thing about Tanner is he's usually better on like legend. So the hits don't matter as much. 102 walks, what you love to see with him. And then just not really the greatest pitch mix for lower difficulties, but on higher difficulties, he's going to be an absolute dog. Probably just like bottom A tier. Assuming you kind of know his niche and how to use them. Back-to-back Tanners. That's interesting. Tanner Scott, I think he comes in and is one of our better lefty options immediately. 125 hits, 125 clutch. The control's a little suspect. Throws a normal four-seam. It's just really hard. It doesn't have outlier, but he does throw it really hard. Slider, circle, sinker. You know, up until this point, I was kind of still tier listing that. Forget exactly what it was, but we had like an 89 Tanner Scott or something like that earlier in the season. I was still tier listing him. They gave him an extra pitch, and it's a very good pitch that's brutal on lefties. Makes him an absolute stud. Skubal, again, worth mentioning, very fast delivery out of the stretch. If you give up a runner on base, you might have just gave up a run if you're not very good with your pinpoint and very exact. 95 hits, 95 walks, 106 clutch. Really, he's carried by the pitch mix because the stats are super mid. I think the pitch mix makes him very good. Very solid overall card. Teo, not a huge fan of this card, but I can't lie. The defense isn't as bad as I thought it would be. Obviously, he won the Derby, so they kind of juiced him, so it kind of makes sense that his defense isn't the worst. Silver Shield, if you put one parallel on him, assuming you're leaving him in his primary left field, which is a dub because that's where he should play, is in the corner. 65 reaction, 70 speed. So defensively, not the worst option out there. And then when you look at his hitting stats, they're crazy. 120 left, 112 right, 125 power against both sides with 125 clutch. Just absolutely perfect. The problem with him for me is he has a slap swing. He does not have one of my favorite slap swings in the game. I find myself personally just getting jammed a ton with his swing. I think he had a supercharged card earlier in the year. I got him in BR and I was geeked. And I think he ended up batting like 200 in that run. So I don't personally like his swing. It's probably a card that you're going to have to try for yourself. But in theory, on paper, he's S tier. For a lot of people, he'll probably be an S tier card. Theo Gillen, this card's fine. Rays pick. 93 left, 107 right, 84 left, 98 right with 103 clutch. And he's relatively fast and halfway decent fielder. But really, look at the positional versatility. Plays every position other than catcher and pitcher. So I think he's decent. Maybe that's worth bumping him up, but for now, we'll probably just leave him in that C tier. Tommy White, another one of these 95s. I believe he's actually statted fairly decently compared to a lot of these other 95s. You'll see 100, 99, 104, 103, 99 clutch. Not a terrible fielder. Plays third base. You don't need the greatest glove to play there. If you play him at first base, he's pretty decent. So yeah, I think that's enough to differentiate you from a lot of these other 95s. He's statted very well. Bazana, S tier for sure. Plays a lot of positions very well. The stats on his card are pretty good. 114 left, 117 right, 98 power left, 102 power right, 116 clutch. And you know, fielding, he's just kind of meh. He's mid. You know, he's above average. But he's also very fast, so that's gonna help his defense. Plays third, plays second. Those are probably the two positions I'd probably keep him at. But you know, he can slot in anywhere. He can play short. He can play every outfield position for you. Very versatile card. Again, another one of these guys where if you have to buy some of the high round cards to lock in for Aaron Judge, not a bad option just because you never know when you'll be able to use them. Might be eligible for the next event or something. Plays every single position basically. A very good all around kind of utility guy. This Trey Turner, I want to put him in S tier. The stats are more representative of like an A tier card, but at the end of the day, it's Trey Turner, right? His swing is absolute butter. Maybe he gets like a player of the month card, maybe just kind of manifesting that. 113 left, 119 right, 86 power left, 78 power right, 114 clutch. So that's kind of the problem with this card in comparison to like the Chase card that we got. The Chase card had crazy power against lefties. This one has respectable power against lefties, relatively bad power against righties. But it is better than like the Chase card had. So he's also a very good fielder, actually. A Trey Turner card that's a very good fielder. Crazy. 91 fielding, 92 reaction. I think that's an easy S tier. Has an insanely good swing, has breaking ball. You'd like to also have dead red, but beggars can't be choosers. Easy S tier card, definitely worth like the 30K or whatever he is. Freya Savage, another fun name. Probably just a C tier card. I'm going to have to see the pitch mix. Blue Jays pick. So we have 103 hits, relatively high. The control's kind of low. Four seam, slider, splitter, 12-6. Yeah. You know, we were off to a hot start, but the rest of the pitch mix was kind of bleh. He just kind of, you know, merges in with those other 95s. Tyler Anderson, good control guy, a guy that will probably be very good for a lot of people on Hall of Fame and Legend. On All-Star, probably not the best card in the world. 110 hits, 92 control. One of the better like hits control differences that we've seen. Kind of makes a card more conducive to be successful on those higher difficulties. He's kind of got that. Also has max out clutch. Never bad to be at your best when you have a runner on base. Four seam, circle change, cutter, sinker, slider. Very respectable pitch mix. The problem is he throws straight BP. He throws very, very slow. He does have good pitch mix, but he throws extremely slow. Does kind of have a funky delivery. So again, maybe good for some people in Hall of Fame. Should be an absolute stud on like Legend. Glasnow, this card's terrible. Like every Glasnow card, you know, he just throws the most default pitches in the game. And D tier might be a little harsh on him. 102, 82, 93 clutch, 4 seam slider, 12-6 sinker. Very mediocre pitch mix. A sinker saves it a little bit, but he's honestly just one of these draft cards. They just kind of gave him like a Joe Random pitch mix and gave him some halfway decent stats. And everything he throws other than like the sinker's probably gonna get absolutely tanked. Not my favorite card. Vance Honeycutt, UNC product. The problem with this card is he's like an all-star or like a derby card, honestly. 77, 75. Very good power in 103, 101. Bad clutch, very good fielder, very fast. So it just kind of depends on what you need. But for most people, I don't think he's going to be the greatest. But if you're on All-Star and you want a fast, power-hitting Eric Davis type of center fielder, he can fill that role. But for a lot of other people, not going to be that guy. Vlad Guerrero Jr., I guess it's worth saying, since Senior also has a halfway decent card at this point. First base, third base, 102, 107, 88 power left, 83 power right. What have they done to my boy? If he could just hit the ball in the air, he'd probably have easily 90 plus power. 100 clutch, and decent fielding. So you kind of see where a lot of the overall on this card came from. It's not the hitting stats, it's the fact that they gave him halfway decent defense. Has good quirks, has a relatively decent swing, but I think there's just better options to go with at first base. I wouldn't be shocked if that like 91 collection Vlad that we have is relatively similar to this card statistically. Doesn't really feel like a 95. Wyatt Langford, S tier. I hate his swing. I unlocked this card after doing the All-Star collection just because all those cards count towards the season collection as well. So I figured I'd throw him and Jackson Holiday in here just to, you know, make them worth mentioning. Stats-wise, 125 left, 101 right, 125 left, 86 right, 125 clutch, 80 fielding, 99 speed. He's a stud, but I just cannot stand his swing. So for some people, he's kind of like Teo, where for some people, he's going to be an absolute stud, easy S tier card. The stats don't lie. And then for some other people, he's going to suck. So, you know, just kind of is what it is. Zach Wheeler, I think they maybe touched his pitch mix on this card. Don't quote me. Let's see. 103 hits. 86 control, so like I talked about, the ratio there's pretty decent. It definitely for a 95 overall card. 104 clutch, 4 seam, sinker, cutter, slurve, splitter. So they did touch his pitch mix. He no longer has multiple curveballs. So yeah, I think I'm vindicated in that. That this card's better than all the other Wheeler cards we've had up until this year, or up until this point in the year. He's an absolute stud. I think he's a very underrated budget option. If you're shopping around the NL East for which one to choose first, I'd probably go Zach Wheeler. And just in general, pitchers are kind of easier to use. But yeah, guys, that is it. That is the All-Star drop. Feels like a long video. Oh my, 59 minutes. Wow, that's crazy. But there was a ton of cards to go over, a ton of points to make. That is the list. It will be down in the description because I'm sure not a lot of people here want to hear me ramble for 59 minutes. But if you made it this far, leave a comment. Let me know. But till next time, guys.